Hello citizens and welcome back. In today's video, I want to take a look at the planned changes to master modes and what they might mean for the players. As always, if you like this video, sacrifice a like and a comment to the YouTube algorithm and subscribe for more. Also, don't forget to check out the latest episode of the Comm Relay podcast and my community apps, the Armory and the Hauler. And here's a shout out to our amazing patrons for their support of the channel and everything else I do. Master modes are one of the most controversial features ever added to Star Citizen. We are now about a year into the initial implementation and we're still seeing a lot of resistance from the players. The caveat is that master modes as we know them now are not their final form. Lots of features are missing and there is a complete lack of balancing. Also, many of the ships currently in-game are still not updated to the gold standard, which I think is one of the major reasons some ships don't handle as desired. So, what changes are coming to master modes and flight in general in the next year? Well, actually there is one major change coming in 4.0 that's not directly flight related, but is a big improvement. I am of course talking about the new advanced ship heads-up display, which is right now in the PTU as a separate toggle in the settings, and it looks a lot better than the current ship HUD. My understanding is that it's still in development, but we can already turn it on. This will result in some duplications of the HUD elements on some ships, but in general I think it's an improvement, and I can't wait to see the final result. But moving on to the actual flight changes coming sometime in the future that were talked about during the IAE shows. First of all, quantum boosting is making a comeback. Now, it was never cancelled in the first place, but it was first mentioned in a monthly report about 2 years ago and then briefly shown at CitizenCon that same year, and then we haven't really heard much about it until now. The problem is simple. Right now, if you need to fly to a location that doesn't have a quantum beacon, you have to quantum to the nearest location that does, and then fly in nav mode until you reach your actual destination. The problem here is that the place you actually want to go to could be several hundred kilometers away from the nearest beacon. So even in nav mode at full speed, it's going to take you a while to get there. This is not a major problem, but it's not ideal because you want to spend more time doing the actual activity rather than flying in a straight line. At the same time, speed in nav mode is also reduced by the atmosphere, so traveling to a location in an atmosphere can take even longer. So in essence, nav mode is too slow and quantum is too fast and requires a destination. Quantum boosting bridges this gap by allowing you to travel at a fraction of the quantum travel speed while maintaining full control over the direction of travel in real time. Meaning you can go fast, but you don't need a specific point to target. This is actually a pretty nice quality of life improvement. First time quantum boosting was shown included some changes to scanning as well, which allowed you to see unmarked points of interest that you could quantum boost to. But I don't think these changes will be included when quantum boosting releases. I think they will be a part of a larger radar and scanning overhaul sometime in the far future. The interesting part of quantum boosting is that it kind of ignores the laws of physics. Since it uses the quantum bubble, speeding up and slowing down doesn't generate g-forces. Since according to the lore, rather than moving your ship, you're moving a bubble of space-time around your ship along with your ship. This is not that important for the gameplay, but it kind of solves the problem of massive g-forces when exiting nav mode. The other change is more important and more far-reaching. Right now, when you switch to nav mode, you lose shields and weapons, because shields and outgoing projectiles disrupt the quantum bubble that's being created. Now, that explanation doesn't quite make sense, because getting shot at won't disrupt your spooling for quantum jump or take you out of nav mode. So, CIG planned to remove the weapon restriction while in nav mode, meaning that you will lose your shields but retain the ability to use weapons. Though my understanding is that it will be a feature of engineering rather than a feature of master modes. As a part of this, CIG planned to convert master modes into operator modes. Right now, master modes are, to an extent, set apart from mining mode, scanning mode, or mining mode. What CAG want to do is unify all of these modes under the umbrella term of operator modes. Though this seems to be more of a terminology decision rather than something directly impacting the behavior of your ship. The more important change is that engineering and components and ship tiers will have a significant impact on the performance of the given ship. And while master modes will give you some default presets for resource management, you will be able to customize them to fit your needs, which directly leads us to having the ability to fire the ship's weapons while in nav mode. And this creates a few very interesting opportunities. First, interceptor ships will suddenly become very relevant. The interceptor ship archetype is very interesting as well. They have a lot of forward speed and can deliver a lot of damage over a short period. But with the current implementation of master modes, they get only a very short while to effectively pursue and engage a fleeing ship before it can outrun the interceptor. With the planned change, interceptor can technically engage their target at full nav speed. Also, it technically allows dogfights to happen at full speed as well, which, given the lack of shields, could create opportunities for the high speed and high risk fights that fighter pilots crave so much. But this change also creates some problems, especially for non-combat ships. Master modes arguably made it easier to run away when attacked, obviously depending on location and situation. The assumption being that if you're in a vulture or a prospector or really any ship that's not designed for combat and doesn't have a turret, you are going to try to run away when attacked. But if the attacker can fire at you even at nav mode speeds, then fleeing becomes very ineffective. Quantum boosting might actually solve this, especially if it's not limited by the atmosphere like quantum travel is. So when you get attacked, you switch to nav mode and then quantum boost away. This technically maintains the current dynamic, just at higher speeds. And it also retains the incentive for the attacker to be prepared and bring a quantum dampener. However, if atmospheric limits of quantum travel are applied to quantum boosting as well, then this might become a significant problem. But this might actually boil down to how small non-combat ships are designed. When you have a look at an industrial ship like the Prospector or the Vulture or even the C1 or the Mole, you will see that all of them have a small forward-facing weapon and no armed turrets. The issue here is that for the most part, if you find yourself in a fight, your target won't be in front of you. It will likely be behind you as you flee or maneuvering somewhere around you. In both cases, a forward-facing weapon is next to useless. So in a scenario where you're forced to flee from an attacker in nav mode, you have no shields, a speed disadvantage, and no way to return fire. You may say that armor is not in game yet and it will impact survivability of ships, and technically you are right. But I imagine that ships like Prospector are not that well armored. Realistically speaking, if you're designing an industrial ship, you don't want to waste space and lift capacity on armor. Engineering and physicalized components might provide some survivability boost to industrial ships, but again, the lack of protection and in some cases component redundancy significantly decreases the efficiency. So is there a way to fix this? Well, technically yes, but it would involve a major redesign of how industrial and non-combat ships are armed. For single-seat ships, I would replace the forward-facing pilot-controlled guns with multiple-point defense weapons, or an automated turret that can cover the front and rear of the ship. For example, with the Prospector, I would remove the front turret mount and move it to the middle of the ship. There is a suitable mounting point at the bottom of the ship next to the mining bags. This way, it would be able to cover the lower hemisphere of the ship. Alternatively, I would replace it with two PDCs, one on the top and one at the bottom of the Prospector. The idea is to give the ship some deterrent weapons that would make an attacker keep their distance, especially when pursuing in nav mode. PDCs or a size 1 turret are a perfect choice here. They are not powerful enough to take down a shielded opponent, but can be quite dangerous for targets without shields. For ships that can have multiple crew members, I would add PDCs and replace the pilot-controlled weapon with a remote turret. The Raft does this pretty well actually, though it could still use a PDC or two. The C1 and the Mole would be a good candidate for this as well. They both have a co-pilot seat, so CAG could add the remote turret for the co-pilot to control, as well as some PDCs for additional defense. In general, non-combat ships need to be redesigned to include more defensive measures and defensively placed weapons. This change can technically be applied to most of the existing ships, especially with adding a few PDCs which we now have in game. And with that being said, that's all for today. What do you think? Should non-combat ships receive defensive weapons? How will the change to master modes impact the balance of combat? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, fly safe, and I will see you in the verse.